welcome back to another episode of Card Talk, a podcast where we spend a little bit of time talking about cards from Lord of the Rings, the card game. I'm your host, Dave Walsh.
And I'm Ted Manick, and I love talking about cards. And that's what we're here to do today. We're here to talk about cards.
Well, technically, we're here to talk about card.
We're here to talk about card.
Oh, man. Right. Well, unfortunately, Grant has to work today, so Ted and I decided to talk about some cards without Grant. So Grant,
power trios down to a dynamic duo. But, yeah, we'll muscle through and just get talk about some cards. I'm excited.
Yeah, and so before we jump into the card that we're going to talk about today, I just want to take a minute to thank all of our patrons that help support the show. It's because of everybody out there that throws us a little bit of a donation that we're able to expand and bring cool swag to people and things like that. So if you're interested in becoming a patron of the show, please visit patreon.com/cardtalk2018 and sign up and be eligible for all sorts of neat things. You want things? We will give you neat things.
All of the things.
So
all
of the things, which is a shout out to this current cycle that we're in. But how about we don't talk about this current cycle, Ted? How about we talk about a card from Legend?
We're doing today's card on Card Talk is Gildor's Counsel.
Bum, bum,
so
bum.
Yeah, we're talking about Gildor's Counsel today. It is a event in the lore sphere that costs 3. It says play during the quest phase before characters are committed to the quest. It has the text action, reveal 1 less card from the encounter deck to a minimum of 1.
Okay, so before you get into your thing, I'm gonna say this, and I think we had a card on recently that we were talking about this, where there's certain cards that just highlight different play numbers of people, like different players, and so we were talking about Strider's Path, I think, and we were talking about how as a solo player, I have a hard time playing Strider's Path, not because it's not good, but just because it's hard to fit into a deck that has to do everything. Mm-hmm. And so here's a card that
solo play does nothing.
It's a non-bow it's not even a non-bow because it doesn't combo with anything, right? I actually asked Chris Stanford, C-Stan, who was on the show talking about Earstore, what the etymology of the word non-bow was, and he says it's a non-combo. This is so this just isn't a combo. This is just a non-consideration when you're playing solo, which, as most of the listeners know, that's what I play 95% of my time. So I never consider this. And then before I throw it over to you, I will say one thing that I think it speaks volumes to how good this card is in multiplayer, though, because they did reprint it when the 2-player starter came out. So there is a version of this card in the 2-player starter. So I think that's
in the limited edition?
In the limited edition, yeah. So
I didn't think so, but I don't remember.
Yeah, I mean, and so this is I'll throw the limited edition starter artwork up right over here somewhere. But yeah, so at least it's on good authority when I get to the end and when I pan it, it'll be it's good authority that it's a pretty good card. So
yeah.
But Ted, go ahead. What do you?
Yeah, so I'll preface where I'm essentially rating this as 2 players mostly, but I've played it in multiplayer games, including a deck I brought to Count of the Rings too, where I played it. It's actually in one of my Halden decks, believe it or not, with Halden, Elrond, and Arwen. But this fits into a lot of lore decks, and I think it's quite powerful. I think 2 players is definitely its sweet spot, because I think when you're playing 2 players, to do 1 card instead of 2 is like, it blows my mind. I think it's immensely powerful, because if you think about what that card is, so yes, you're paying 3 resources, which is a lot. Mm-hmm. Whether you're running mono lore, resource acceleration, like it's a lot for a one-time effect. you could rate that effect against a 3-cost ally that maybe has 2 willpower and some other effect, right?
Right.
So if you kind of weight it against that, you have to weigh like, okay, is the card you're gonna like you play the ally, and that ally is there for the rest of the game until it dies or whatever.
Right.
But not doing a card, it can save you a lot of other actions in the game. Like if you don't reveal an enemy that turn, you flip over a location, and the next card would have been an enemy. You like that turn you can quest for a lot more too. The turn you play this card, because like no matter what comes out, there's going to be less of it.
Right. Yeah.
There's just like it saves you on a lot of. It's almost action advantage in that way, because you're like, well, yes, our one card, again, talking a 2-player, could be an enemy, but it might not. And it opens up a lot of room, and it saves you on willpower too, right? You're revealing one less card. So if that card has got one or more threats, or it's a treachery that you just didn't have to deal with that turn, it lets you make a lot of ground on that one turn. It lets you, clear through the location if you've been stuck. It lets you, quest for less if you have enemies still in play with you. Like, okay, I can hold back some of my characters to attack and defend against this big enemy. It's a really good, like, okay, let's capitalize on this turn by controlling the encounter deck.
Yeah, and I think and I don't think that 3 resources is it's a lot to pay, but I don't think it's a lot to pay for the effect. You're basically canceling a card from the encounter deck for a turn, and that is, you're I don't even want to say test of willing. Your door is closing it. You're just getting rid of that card that doesn't come out,
Yeah, I mean, it'll still be there next turn, or if you have an enemy in play, that card like becomes the shadow card and it might go away. But you can also combine it too with some other effects. Like if you're scrying.
Well, that's exactly what I was going to talk about. Yeah, like you're playing Palantir, and you can look at the deck, or Henemarth, which is in Sphere, like you can see what's coming up and kind of play Gildor's Counsel strategically to kind of delay some things, right?
Yeah, right. So if you're playing a 2-player, for example, you have Lower Hero Denethor or Henemarth Riversong, you're like, I'm going to look at the top 1 card.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, this one card's not so bad. It's a location. Right. All right. Let's play Gildor's Counsel. And you can immediately calculate everything for the turn. Mm-hmm. You can immediately calculate how much you need. Like if you have enemies in play, you can do all the math and figure out like who needs to quest, who needs to attack, how much you need to get through the stage.
Right.
It does quite a bit.
Yeah, and that's the bummer is, and I get why mechanically, but the bummer is it just doesn't play for solo. That's the bummer. Like every time I'm building a deck, I look at Gildor's Counsel and I say, "Oh, it reduces it by 1. How come I don't play it?" Oh, because it's a minimum of 1. You can't cancel. There's very few decks that cancel a whole turn in the encounter deck, and one of which is, I guess, the Legacy of Numenor, gives everybody a second resources, and you're paying 4 threat. Everybody's paying 4 threat for that. So, that's a little more to pay than 3 resources.
Yeah. Things you can do, like the trick when this card came out, but you can still do to reduce its cost, is you can combo if you're playing a lower Hobbit hero and you're playing a very good meal, or I think it's a good meal.
Yeah, a very a good tail, a very good meal, something like that.
It's Hobbit. It's all good stuff.
Right. Yeah, it's a good meal, yeah.
Yeah, that's a 0-cost neutral attachment that will reduce a event that matches your hero sphere by 2. So if you have, you can reduce this down to a 1-cost by having an extra 0-cost card in your deck.
Right, and that's worth it.
Yeah, and there's a lot of great hero Hobbit targets. I think Pippin is probably the most common because he's a popular lore Hobbit hero. But you also have Lord Bilbo, and you have Falco as well.
Right.
And
I was gonna say,
you
is there another one? No, probably not. Right.
I
think those are the 3 lower Hobbit heroes.
The 3 lore Hobbit heroes. Yeah. So there's now more targets for a good meal. And
I was just looking up to see if you said a good meal was an attachment. I thought it was an event.
Nope, it's a neutral attachment. It's attached to a Hobbit hero. It is
an attachment. Oh, yeah. Man. Look at you. Okay. Wow.
So it's...
This is why you're on the show, Ted, is because you're way smarter than me.
Talking about the card aesthetics, it's a Magali art drawn.
This is one of the first Magalis that was out there, right? Like,
yeah, because it's a pretty. It came out in the Mirkwood cycle. I don't know which AP.
This came out in the Hills of Unreal.
Yep, it did. Yep. And its flavor text reads, the wide world is all about you. You can fence yourselves in, but you cannot forever fence it out. And this is when the hobbits, this is like very early in the fellowship when the hobbits are leaving the Shire and they're getting, the Black Riders are like stalking them.
Right.
And I recently reread this part of the book and, they bump into Gildor, I think, on the road, and they're just kind of like talking to Gildor, and they're like, yeah, there's like these like black horsemen dudes, and Gildor's like, what? What?
Yeah,
like yeah, these like cloak guys or something are like chasing us, and he's like, you should go with me like right now, because like the hobbits are like. Frodo's like less aware of how like grave the situation in, and Gildor immediately knows like, all right. So he like takes him, I think, to like some type of like clearing or I think that Woody End or something like that, some type of
he
haven, a little safe spot or something in the woods.
Mm-hmm. That's close to the Shire because I think that Gildor was on the way to the Grey Havens when this happened. He was ready to go over to Valinor. And it's funny, there's a part in the book that I always kind of laugh at when I read. Right around this time in the book, there's a fox that goes through and is like, that's a funny sight to see, those hobbits doing that thing. And then the fox never sees them again or something like that. And I always thought that was like a call out to the Hobbit and J.R. Tolkien saying goodbye to that sort of like writing style of kind of the more whimsical thing, and then like, okay, here's a fox that's kind of interacting and things like that. And now we get into the more serious writing style of the Lord of the Rings, because that's really the only kind of like whimsical sort of moment I get when I read Lord of the Rings, was that fox going, well, look at these hobbits sleeping outside. So strange.
Yeah, like what does the fox say is the question.
Right. I think the fox says cheech 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 chow. Cheech 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 chow.
Something like that. Yeah.
Sometimes the fox says ahi ahi ahi. Ahi ahi ahi. Okay. All of this to say is that all this happened around Gildor when Gildor was introduced to us in that.
Yep. And it's the art's cool. He's talking to them around the campfire, trying to give them advice,
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, like we now have Gildor as a hero, right? Like Gildor Glorian's a leadership hero.
He was released in the 2-player starter, but he hasn't been announced as a hero in the cycle, in the current Vengeance of Mordor cycle. So maybe or maybe he's coming out in the next. No, because Lothiriel is coming out. He's definitely gonna be a hero. That's been released, but we just don't know when it's gonna be, I guess.
Yeah. So it's unfortunate that his he's leadership, so he's not lore. He can't like innately play this, and his ability is to spend a resource to draw a card. So he doesn't have any like direct interaction with this card, which would have been like really really neat. But like I said, with a good meal, and there being a couple lore hobbits, you kind of get the like, it kind of fits in with like Hobbit play style, a little bit by if you're playing secrecy and you want to draw less cards just because you have less of a board state to start with, it kind of fits in there thematically too.
Yeah. It's hard when we talk about these events because events are just kind of events that happen. We're not attaching them to stick around forever and ever and things like that. So, there's not necessarily always a ton to talk about with events. But I think they really nailed this card in terms of what it does. I think. Yeah,
and it prevents a card. Right. Even in multiplayer, 4 players, I played it I think the final turn we were trying to win. We were trying to flip over 4 cards and defeat the last part of the stage. I'm like, well, let's just do one less card. It's it's a really great last turn play as well.
Right, and a lot of cards don't hold their weight over many rounds, I guess. So there's cards that are early game cards, and then that's it. And then there's cards that are middle game cards, and that's it. And then there's cards that are end cards, and that's it. And so this is good beginning, middle, or end, no
matter what stage you're on, early on, you might be better off trying to build your board state, I guess, as opposed to playing this card. But also it can give you a turn to breathe as well. Right. It gives you a turn to get over a hump. So, Right. Let's. You want to ring this card, David?
Let's ring this guy. So, for anybody who doesn't know or is new to the show, we have a highly arbitrary yet scientific system where we rank these cards on a scale from 1 to 10, where 1 is the best card in the game, and number 10. And a 10 is a card that we throw back into the fiery chasm from whence it came. So, I guess I'll go first. And here's the problem. And so when I rank these cards, I always rank them based on how often do I play them? I know I probably have some sort of duty to talk about how awesome it is and things like that, which I feel like happens in the body of the episode where we talk about it. But the problem is that I just never play this. It's really a card that as a solo player, you just don't play it ever. And then what happens is when I build a 2-player or 3-player multiplayer deck, because I don't play this most of the time, I never think to play it when I'm playing multiplayer, right? Because I never play it. So I can see the benefit in it, especially like you said, Ted, 2-player. You're reducing the amount of cards by 50% that the card is that the encounter deck is thrown at you. But I'm going to have to give this.
Yes, David. Follow the math, right? You're a science math person, so right. Follow the statistics to rate the card.
Right. I mean, I just have to give it an 8. I really do. I know. I'm going to get killed for it, but that's just 8. It's just my play style, I just can't. Yep. It never makes it into a deck. So, go ahead, Ted. Set me straight.
I'll set you straight. I'll probably give it a half right now. I'll give it a 4. I think it's a tremendously good card. Yes, it's expensive, but like I said, and I agree with you, it's not viable. It literally does nothing in solo. But when you're looking at 2 players, it's sweet spot. 3, it's good. It's not as good 4-player, but still has some impact. I'd give it a 4 because, like I said, no matter when you draw it, it's always useful. Because you're probably playing at least 2 lore heroes, and if you're playing a mono deck, you can play it the turn you get it without any issues. So no matter when I get it, I'm happy to see it because the card's never doesn't apply to the situation, right?
Except playing solo.
Well, right, I guess in multiplayer. Okay. So it makes it very versatile to me in player counts of 2 or higher.
Yeah. Right. What I'll do is I'll just rely on you to bring this card to the table, and then I'll never have to worry about it.
Yeah, you know what? That's fine. And, again, if I'm playing 2, 3-player and someone spends the resources on this, I'm not going to complain. I'm one less card. Sweet. If you're already bogged down with locations and it's one less location you got that turn, awesome. Right. It helps you get over humps.
Yep. Well, that's our little discussion about Gildor's Counsel. So why don't you guys join us again as we talk about more cards from the game. Ted, have a great day. And if you're interested in finding this or any of our back episodes of Card Talk, Feel free to search YouTube where you can find our flagship video episodes with the username CardTalk2018. Or you can search the RSS feed, cardtalk2018.libsyn.org, for our extended audio versions of our podcast. Or you can find us on Facebook at CardTalk2018. And if you have any questions for Grant or myself or for both of us, feel free to email us at cardtalk2018@gmail.com.